Warhammer 40k books will no longer be translated to Ukrainian. Picture this, you're hunkered down in a trench outside Kharkiv. Russian drones are buzzing overhead, and when you finally get a 5-minute break from dodging artillery, what do you reach for? A 40k novel. In Ukrainian. Because for a lot of soldiers on the front line, escaping to the grimdark of the 41st millennium isn't just a hobby, it's survival. But what happens when the one company paying for those Ukrainian translations suddenly ghosts the whole country, just as the fighting reaches a fever pitch? And why is Games Workshop, a global powerhouse, still cozy with Russian game studios, even as it tells Ukrainian fans to settle for English, Russian, or nothing at all? Welcome to the latest saga in the war for Ukraine's morale. Grab your bolter, this one gets spicy. Hey friends, Wes O'Donnell here, and don't mind me, I'm just taking a few of my Warhammer 40k books to the incinerator. I'll be right back. You know, when I'm not covering how Ukrainian FPV drones are turning Russian tanks into modern art, I'm diving into my other obsession, Warhammer 40k. And today, I wish I could say this episode is all bolters and glory, but instead, I've got a beef with Games Workshop. Yes, the folks who brought us the Emperor, Space Marines, and about 17 million different ways to paint shoulder pads. They've just dropped a crack grenade straight into the morale of Ukraine's fighting men and women. Let's be clear, Warhammer is huge in Ukraine. It's more than plastic minis and grimdark lore. It's a psychological lifeline, something to read in the trenches, a world to escape to when the one around you is exploding. Ukrainian troops have been snapping pics, reading Black Library novels between drone strikes, or recovering in hospital beds. For a lot of these soldiers, Warhammer is as important for mental resilience as body armor is for physical protection. Now, thanks to a partnership with Ukrainian publisher Molfar Comics, Ukrainians finally had access to the galaxy's most brutal stories in their own language. Not in Russian, the language of their enemy, and not just in English. For the first time, they could read about Commissar Yarek's last stand or the horrors of Kadia in Ukrainian, and it meant the world. If you ever doubted the power of nerd culture, trust me, try telling a Ukrainian he can't have his paperback Gaunt's Ghosts. But just as the Astra Militarum gets attached to a tank, GW yanked the contract. No more new translations. Games Workshop says, we won't discuss why. That wouldn't be right. Okay. Inquisition vibes, but zero transparency. Molfar Comics, who worked overtime to make these books happen, is just as in the dark as the rest of us. GW claims it was for good reason, but didn't bother to elaborate. They still plan to sell models in Ukraine. Thanks, I guess. But as for the novels in Ukrainian, back to the void. How'd that go over? Well, let's put it this way. Ukrainian Warhammer fans had a nickname for Games Workshop long before this. Wanker's Workshop, and apparently GW just reconfirmed it. Ukrainian troops, actual frontline soldiers, have come out and said this move is a blow to morale. Sergeant Shekel, a Special Forces vet, told The Telegraph that troops were thrilled when the first Ukrainian-language novels dropped. For years, they've been stuck with pirate Russian translations or English, if they had the skills. Now, they're being told to go back to the invader's language or nothing at all. Honestly, it's like handing out Imperial Guard manuals in Orc. It's insulting. And it cuts deeper because the entire point of this war is about language and culture and identity. Imagine Tolkien being banned from publishing Lord of the Rings in Welsh during World War II. That's what this feels like. Warhammer is a part of a bigger cultural battle. The Ukrainians see GW's novels as a lifeline, a tiny slice of normalcy amid the insanity. There are literally photos, actual evidence of Ukrainian troops reading Warhammer 40k in the trenches. If the Russians shell your trench, at least you die knowing the difference between a Cadian shock trooper and a Krieger. Beyond escapism, there's a real therapy angle also. According to veterans groups, painting miniatures and diving into hobby gaming is actually helping Ukrainian vets recover from PTSD. In other words, GW's decision just made mental health harder for people already fighting for their lives. Now, here's where the plot thickens like stale recap in a guardsman's canteen. Games Workshop loves to say it's standing with Ukraine. Cue the big, bold social media statements, the Union Jack profile filters, and lots of performative solidarity. Quote, "We suspended sales to Russia," end quote. They proudly declared back in 2022. Sounds great, right? Except behind the curtain, GW still has creative partnerships that muddy the waters, starting with Owlcat Games. If you're not a lore goblin, Owlcat is the studio behind Warhammer 40k, Rogue Trader, and the new Dark Heresy video game. The problem? Well, Owlcat was founded in Moscow and still employs a healthy share of Russian developers. These days, the company is officially based in Cyprus, which is the diplomatic equivalent of moving your stash to your grandma's attic and calling it a day. So on one hand, Ukrainian soldiers can't get Black Library novels in their native language. On the other hand, Russian-born coders are still cranking out digital gene stealers for the global Warhammer community and presumably getting paid for it. GW's message is, we can't support Ukrainian-language novels because reasons. But here's a Warhammer video game coded by a studio with roots to the country that's actually invading you. Mixed messages? That's being polite. For Ukrainian fans, especially those who grew up with Russian as the only option, it stings even more. First, you force them to consume Russian language lore, often via pirated PDFs. Now you shut the door on the Ukrainian language while still working with Russian talent. It's the kind of neutrality that would make the Emperor facepalm. So what's GW's official reply? Well, it's a real let-them-eat-cake moment. They told fans, we're still selling models in Ukraine, as if the ability to buy a box of plastic crack somehow makes up for losing access to hundreds of novels and a living, breathing hobby culture. You can just picture some GW exec thinking, they'll be fine with a couple of sprues and some contrast paint. Meanwhile, on the ground in Ukraine, it's a different story. As Molfar Comet's Alexander Nevsky put it, these works are vital for the morale of our people, especially our soldiers, many of whom are our readers. Let's face it, assembling a Bane blade is great therapy if you've just survived artillery shelling, but it doesn't mean much if the assembly guide and the universe's stories are in a language you associate with your enemy. The Ukrainian Warhammer community didn't mince words. They've dusted off that old nickname I mentioned, Wanker's Workshop, and frankly, GW just earned another merit badge for tone-deaf corporate decisions. Comment sections exploded. Fans worldwide, not just in Ukraine, have been calling out the hypocrisy, solidarity on paper, but not in practice. And at the end of the day, it's not about profits, contracts, or some secret good reason. It's about doing the right thing. It's about showing up for a community that's quite literally fighting for its life and not leaving them with Russian pirate translations as their only escape from reality. At the very least, find another localization company in Ukraine who can do these translations. Now, if you're a Warhammer fan, now's the time to make some noise. Because if the 41st Millennium teaches us anything, it's that the good fight is never easy. And sometimes it takes more than a lasgun and some grit. Sometimes you've got to call out the people summoning demons. So what can we do? Well, let's make some noise on social. Let GW know that supporting Ukrainian fans isn't just the right thing, it's good business. Warhammer 40k has always been about fighting the long defeat, standing against overwhelming odds, and telling the darkness, not today. If that doesn't describe Ukraine in 2025, I don't know what does. And to the Ukrainians watching this, keep fighting, both on the battlefield and in the hobby. Whether it's repelling orcs or Russians, the Emperor protects. But a few Black Library novels in your native tongue certainly helps morale. That's it for today, friends. If you think Games Workshop should reverse course, drop a comment, share this video, and if you're feeling spicy, tag Games Workshop on social media. And to my fellow guardsmen, sisters, and Astartes in Ukraine, stay strong. In this grimdark universe, hope is a bolter. And right now, you're carrying it for all of us. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. The Emperor protects.